And so if you're here, if you're watching live, let us know where you're watching from. Let us know that you can hear us. We're going to be talking about EOS today. So if you know what EOS is or you don't know what EOS is, let us know in the comments. And we're going to be answering all your questions and also talking about some good stuff. So let us know where you're watching from. How's your Monday so far, Corey?
Hectic. You know, we had this flooding issue a little while back, so my home office, was kind of wrecked, and so we're still in the whole process of getting that all repaired. So I'm a vagrant in my home, so I'm in a guest room right now, running around. There are far worse things to be contending with. It's just it can make things a little bit hectic at times, but I'm a pretty big fan of Mondays typically. So I like the work week. I'm happy to be engaging and jumping into stuff.
Nice. Well, I hope I hope that you get that resolved soon. It's kind of.
It's a process, right? It's a whole rigmarole. It really is. It's crazy.
It's a crazy thing to be dealing with right now among everything else,
That's one of the things, right? Like now that we're so many months into the pandemic, I feel like, everyone's got their side stuff now, like you can't avoid. And people are contending with all kinds of stuff, just in addition to the overall insanity in the world. So this is our stuff. That's all,
Right. Were you able to see me live? Here we go. All right. I see it showing up on my profile.
Oh, gotcha.
Cool. Hey, Yolanda.
Yeah, you can see Yolanda there. That's cool.
Hey. Awesome. We'll wait another minute or two, and then we will get started officially.
Sweet. So if I'm sharing this in my own profile as people are joining, do I just copy the link to post? Is that what I'm doing?
Yeah, you can do that. Let folks know you're live, and
cool.
Let me know when you're ready.
Live with Marie. Mm-hmm. I really should pull you up as the first Marie I know, but I guess
would think, right?
When you have it's the ordeal of 6,000 plus people in your LinkedIn list, I guess.
Wow. That's a big list. Well, it's funny because you don't always come up as the first either. So, because I know a few Corys, but they spell it differently. So
how dare they?
Right?
Yeah.
They're wrong.
It's one of the first things EOS helped to address for our company was the misspelling of the other Corys in the world. Today
we're going to teach you how to spell your name right.
That's right. That's right. The benefits of the entrepreneurial operating system, they start at a very simple level.
Exactly.
And for folks who don't know, who are wondering what they might be tuning into, just to give a quick explanation, EOS does stand for the entrepreneurial operating system, and so businesses have their different operating systems that people can run on. We did not run on an operating system at all for quite some time, right? And then in our 13th, 14th year, we adopted EOS. I certainly know, like, Holacracy is another one that I'm very familiar with, and I'm sure that there are others. But yeah, so EOS is it's a whole system that supports the way that a business is run in the background. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure we'll jump into much more of the details, but just to give people a little bit of a base about the conversation.
Awesome. So let us know in the chat if you have heard of EOS before, if you're using an operating system, where you're listening from, and if you have any questions, we will see them. So there will be some time for Q&A later. Awesome. Well, let's get started officially. So welcome to today's episode of Coffee with Entrepreneurs Live. I'm here with Corey Blake. Corey is the founder and CEO of Roundtable Companies, and they're a storytelling company, and they're up to some really great stuff. But today we're here to talk about the entrepreneurial operating system. Corey, welcome. And
Thanks.
The first question I ask everybody is how you take your coffee.
Lately, I've been taking it with 2 Truvia and hemp milk,
nice,
which is tasty. And of course, in my rush today, I didn't even grab a cup of coffee. I'm drinking a big mug of water.
So you are pre-coffee this morning.
No, I'm post. Believe me, it's 11 a.m. I'm up between 4 and 5 usually, so
Wow.
I'm 2 cups in. I'm not.
Okay.
I haven't neglected my coffee duties.
Wow. Up between 4 and 5. Wow, that's amazing. I didn't realize you were that early of a riser.
Typically, lately, yeah, I try to get a bunch of things done before my email starts chiming in and my inbox starts filling up. So,
Yeah.
I was writing a script this morning for one of our clients, Pay Active, working on that. So, I know you're a script lover, right? So, we share that in common too.
That's awesome. Yeah, and before this, you were an actor, and so you loved scripts in another way.
I do. I get to play in an entirely different medium now. It's really fun.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So in the comments, let us know how you take your coffee, because I'm always curious, and coffee is really important. It's my entrepreneurial juice, I call it. So.
Entrepreneurial juice. That's awesome. I haven't heard that. I love it.
It's my saving grace most days. So cool. So what is EOS, and why do we need to know about it?
Well, for us, I'll give you the why first. It's been life altering for our organization. There are a number of, I think, intersections that we've had over the past 15 years of our existence. Conscious capitalism was a huge one. That really helped to define our purpose and direction, and our values, of course. And then EOS we came across and started about 2 years ago, and EOS has given us a kind of structure to our organization that fundamentally we didn't have. And you have to recognize I have a theater degree, not a business degree, right? So I started a business kind of out of necessity, and then worked for many years to figure it out as we went. But that meant that fundamentally there was a lot of infrastructure that wasn't really well in place. And when we came across EOS, which we heard about from a client, one of our clients we were writing a book with, and this is a client who's got a $1 billion real estate portfolio of multifamily units out of Dallas, and we just loved the way that he would describe how he ran his organization, and he would constantly talk about EOS. And so over a period of time, I was hearing about it again and again. And eventually we looked into it, and really it's an infrastructure mechanism to support an organization. It helps to bring clarity around what an organization is targeting. But I think the most effective aspect of EOS is that it breaks the year up into these 90-day cycles, and it creates this whole structure of accountability at the week level all the way up through that 90 days. And the goal is to achieve what's called traction, right? When 80% of the whole operating system is being utilized well by us, then our tires can really dig in and propel us forward. So that is the entire goal, is to help bring more alignment throughout an organization and create the kind of accountability and clarity that ensures that we're making continual progress. And it absolutely has been game changing for us from the very first meeting that we had with our implementer.
So what does an implementer do?
So in many ways, an implementer, functions like a coach of sorts, but an implementer within the EOS ecosystem is someone who is thoroughly trained in how to utilize the EOS model. And ours is a gentleman named Chris White out of Florida, and Chris helps to keep us on track. So we have quarterly meetings with Chris when travel is possible. We actually fly our leadership all comes out. Our leadership team all goes out to Florida, and we spend a day with him each quarter, and then 2 days when we do planning for the following year. And he's like, in many ways, he's like our football coach. And I've always described Chris as he's kind of, that kind of, like, he just loves to ass kick. And, he knows when he needs to nudge, but he has a very firm approach in how he handles us, which is great for our kind of our culture, right? Our culture,
Right.
because we have so many creatives, we can get really fluid, overly so, and Chris is tough, and we like tough, like, right? We're also a competitive organization, so he serves kind of as our rallying football coach. He kicks us when, in our butts when we need to be kicked, but he holds us to some pretty high standards that ultimately we set for ourselves, but that he guides us through, and he's very no nonsense, which is particularly helpful because we're a group of people who can rationalize a lot of different approaches. And so having somebody in the mix who can help provide that clarity and be no nonsense is awesome.
So it sounds like, when you say entrepreneurial operating system, right, it sounds simple, it sounds self-explanatory, but it's actually not, because you get somebody with this, right? You have this, support system where you have an actual coach involved in the process.
By choice, right? So there are tens of thousands of people who have read the book, right? Rocket Fuel is one, and Traction is the other, and that's the whole entrepreneurial operating system model. And some people choose to go and do it on their own, and then other folks will actually hire one of these implementers, of which there are hundreds now, who are certified on behalf of EOS. Chris happens to be, I believe he's one of the top three. He's been with the organization a long time. He is no nonsense about it. He runs the Tractionville podcast, which is specific to EOS and phenomenal. He kicked it off, I don't know, in the last 6 to 9 months, I think, and it's just been a beast. And we're a sponsor of that now too, because we love EOS folks, and we want to work with more people who use this operating system, because we speak the language now.
That's amazing. And you said that this has been a game changer, right? So in what ways has EOS improved your meetings? How has it improved your goal tracking? What tangible results have you seen?
Well, one of the first things that happened to us was that we became aware of the different roles that a CEO takes on and the president takes on, right? Kristen Westberg is our president. When we started EOS, I think she was in her 3rd year of being the president of the company. And yet, me with my theater degree, I really never knew how to help her be successful in her role. Like, it was very challenging. I'm a visionary-minded person. I'm a very fast decision maker. I'm a very gut instinct leader, which is not unusual for a typical founder visionary type. And yet, the actual organization of running the business requires a totally different mindset. Right. And so working with EOS, we understood, so I'm in the visionary role, and Kristen's in the integrator role. And simply understanding some of those differences was huge right away. But ultimately, what EOS provided to Kristen that I was never able to give her was a playbook for how to play that role, how to be in that role. And Chris is the perfect implementer for Kristen. Kristen grew up with a father who's a football coach, right? So when I had my first conversation with Chris, I was like, oh, this is a match made in heaven. I think I was really, crossing my fingers, but it gave her so much clarity. And ultimately, in the integrator role, like, the integrator owns the P&L, right? Visionary is really out front, focusing on innovation, new ideas, and the integrator is more of the day-to-day running of the business. And so simply understanding those differences and providing more of that structure and accountability immediately grounded Kristen in a way that I had been unable to do for her. And we're talking, she was in her 3rd year of running the organization when all of a sudden it was like a switch got flipped, and she became a different person when she had the right kind of support, both through Chris and the model itself.
That's awesome. So if I'm understanding you correctly, as the visionary, you get to spend more time being the visionary, right? Because you now have this support system with, being able to support Kristen as the integrator in the company. That's
the whole goal. And it's not an overnight thing by any means, because There are many seats, in the EOS model. They do a brilliant job of orchestrating the typical organization chart, the org chart for a company. And instead of focusing on the people, it focuses on the role. What are the responsibilities of each role? What are the KPIs of each role? And these are things we had never set up formally. We had set up, accountability structures and organizational charts, but in a very standard way that we didn't really feel, attached to or understand how to use them to guide the organization. And EOS gave us that structure very quickly. And over time, the goal is to continue to free me up to more fully be able to sit in that visionary role. But, the reality is, in the interim, there is a lot of work that we all have to do together. But we are so light years ahead of where we were just a couple of years ago, and spending the time has created a launch pad. So much so that even during this unfortunate circumstance of the pandemic, we continue to grow.
That's fantastic, and I mean, if you're growing right now, what else can you ask for?
Yeah, we feel very, very blessed.
It's a testament to what you guys do. I mean, it's Roundtable Companies really supports their clients in ways that I've never seen a storytelling company do. So it's wonderful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
So what are some of your favorite components of the EOS model in terms of what's worked for you guys?
The meeting structure is really the key centerpiece. Previously, we were the kind of organization where we'd come together for meetings and think we had made some decisions, and then the next week we were repeating the similar conversations, trying to solve an old issue again that still hadn't been solved, or really thought we talked about that, but we haven't come to some kind of agreement, it appears, or we misunderstood each other. And it was a lot of wheel spinning as opposed to wheels digging in and moving. And so the EOS structure for our senior leadership team meetings has provided, we get so much done. It is unbelievable. And there's a literal structure, there's 5 minutes to do this, there's 5 minutes, to do this. And you go through a series, and then the bulk of it is called IDSing, where you're identifying, discussing, and solving issues. And the goal is to solve them to a degree where you never have to talk about them again. And of course, it's an imperfect science, and it's it's not a 100% thing by any means. But wow, the number of things that we can move through now, whereas previously we could spend months spinning and really feeling like we weren't, getting that traction and moving things forward. And now what this has allowed for is a distribution of ownership. And by that, I mean a distribution of the number of people who are ultimately responsible for their own areas of the business, as opposed to, when you don't have an operating system like this, or you haven't figured out some kind of structure, oftentimes leadership can feel like they're carrying everybody else and constantly making too many of the decisions, et cetera. This really does distribute ownership. And then once our senior leadership team really understood how to run those meetings, then we started distributing them down into other teams. And now I think we've got 6, 7, maybe 8 teams within the company who are also running their meetings according to the EOS model. And that's the whole idea of traction getting further pressed down into the organization, more people stepping up to lead in different ways. So much has become possible because we have this accountability structure that just was not there before.
Right. And of course, I've been to some of your meetings, and I have to say that the amount of things that you guys get done in, however long it is, 60, 90 minutes, whatever, is, I mean, I've been to a lot of bad Zoom, right? I think we all have, these Zoom calls can be endless. We're all feeling Zoom fatigue. Being on a meeting like that, that's super organized, super focused. Even if the issues don't get solved in that meeting, you still at least know what the structure is. You know that you're going to end on time. You know that you're going to begin on time, right? You know, and that's unfortunately that's not something that we take for granted, right? Because meetings can, especially nowadays, right? So I love that about this.
Yeah, it's interesting as you bring it up. I'm aware that the meetings that you've been involved in, they're kind of, you know, what I might refer to as the messy middle of the model, because the senior leadership team, we've all been in the room getting our butts kicked by Chris about how we do it, and then these other meetings, we're still figuring out how do we teach other people who haven't been in the room or haven't been coached by Chris how to adopt the model. And some things work really well, and some things we're like, I'm not sure how to address that without a coach in the room. I'm not sure what would Chris say, this or that. So, as with any process that's new to a business, there is the evolution of the adoption, right? And so, I'm appreciating that you've been privy to some of that, and some of it is messy as we figure it out.
So if that's the messy version of EOS, imagine what the...
Oh yeah, you'd be so stoked by our leadership team meetings. You know, everyone who's been thoroughly coached by Chris, like those meetings, we just zip through and knock out really important stuff. One of the key pieces of the whole model is, are people voicing the issues that truly need to be dealt with? And that was another thing that in the past we constantly dealt with was. People had awarenesses of things that were issues, but there was some obstacle to sharing it, whether it was intimidation, not being sure that it really is an issue, like people might convince themselves otherwise if they're not somebody who's used to bringing up, things that might upset people or cause conflict.
Yeah.
And we've really been focusing on how do we name the things that need attention and not take it personally, and just be focused on solving it together and supporting each other in attaining a new height. And this model has been really especially glorious at helping us to address the things that really need addressing. Because as an organization, you spend years avoiding stuff that really needs to get dealt with. And finally, when it comes up, you'll have people who say, oh yeah, well, I saw that a while ago.
Right.
Why didn't you bring it up? Well, because the system didn't support the safety in bringing it up, or whatever foundational structure was in place. So now we have that. So people are learning how to find their voice in new ways as a result. That's a powerful system when it's supporting people vocalizing things so they can get dealt with. Awesome.
So when does an entrepreneur or small business owner, when is the ideal time to start using EOS? Is it early, is it the earlier the better, or is it once they're established? Like, what do you recommend?
Well, as with all things business, earlier is certainly better. We adopted this in our 13th year, and my goodness, if we had started earlier, that would have been insanely beneficial. And yet, you've also, leaders have so many competing interests, right?
Sure.
When is it good to start focusing on your culture? Well, my goodness, from day one. But, there's so many different fires to be focused on, right? So, and there's also, if you're going to do this well and work with an implementer, then there's a more legitimate cost to it, because these are highly skilled people.
Absolutely.
Like, Chris, who we work with, he's owned his own businesses. He's sold his own businesses. And then he decided that this was his next step, was he wanted to work with other people who had businesses and support them using the EOS model. So, so we make a significant investment in using the model. So I think it really depends. If you've got a younger company that is well financed, I would say jump at the opportunity to set up this kind of infrastructure early. My goodness, because we have clients who have very significant, sizable companies where it seems like everyone's just running around with their hair on fire all the time. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, please, how do I have this conversation with you about what EOS could do for you?
Yeah.
And how it could change your whole ecosystem. And it's very hard to implement something like this when your growth is exponentially expanding, while at the same time there's chaos everywhere.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's a tough time. So certainly the earlier the better, while also understanding leaders have a lot to try to prioritize.
Yeah, and it's so easy. I mean, I know for myself, some days I just put out fires, right? And it's easy to be in that mode, and once you get there, it's hard to get out, right? So the earlier the better,
And yet, right, and yet, like, we deal with very few fires now,
Yeah.
right? Like when there's more structure, there tends to be less drama. I think that's a big piece. When there was less accountability or less infrastructure, when things weren't getting done or we were misunderstanding each other, it was very easy to just find someone to blame. I'm a pretty good blamer. That's a natural default, which is probably pretty typical for visionaries. But so to have this infrastructure of support, it's quelled fires. Like there's not a whole lot that burns in that way. And it used to, man. I mean, it used to burn pretty hot. Those were challenging moments to get through.
Well, it's interesting because, like, I know, I consider myself the visionary also in my company.
Absolutely,
right?
yes.
And I know what it's like to have to go figure out whose fault something was, and then like go look through the emails and who was supposed to do this and where did the miscommunication happen and why and is this the first time it's happened, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. With EOS, you just see it, right? It's there. Everybody gets assigned something, and then it's right there, right? So there's no question.
I mean, that's certainly the goal. Yeah. And that took time to just. There were many sessions where it was where I remember my feedback would be sitting in the room with Chris, and my feedback would be, I still don't think we're getting to the juicy issues. So figuring out how to create that level of comfort did take maybe 3 quarters to really get. I think it did. I think it was about when we were entering our 4th quarter, we recognized that we were really starting to name some of the stuff that needed to be dealt with, and it wasn't just coming from me anymore. It was coming from other folks, and that just continues to improve. And it's a big deal, right? It's a huge deal when people can bring up the things that need attention.
Sure.
They can be dealt with and solved, and we can move forward without them lingering or, oh my goodness. Yeah, huge benefit.
Amazing. So Annette asked, she said she joined mid-conversation. Hi, Annette, good to see you. And she asked, what does EOS stand for? So, of course, Entrepreneurial Operating System is what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So we have some comments. I'd love to hear what questions you have about this, what questions you have for Corey in general. And, so are there any sort of businesses that benefit better from EOS, or is it sort of industry agnostic?
My guess is that it's industry agnostic. Like I said, we have a client who's running a business in real estate, multifamily. They use EOS like ridiculously well. I know one of our partners, Influence and Company, right, who does strategic content and PR. They run on EOS. So I don't think it's industry specific. I've heard that right, it's for a certain size company. Like you can maybe outgrow EOS. I think that's, when you start getting upwards of thousands of employees, does this work as effectively? I'm not the person to answer that. I'm not positive, but but I think from a structural standpoint, this can support a lot of different organizations.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I would love to talk a little bit about what all the great things that RTC is up to. And I know you're working with Proactive. You're working with you've founded Conscious Capitalism Press. Talk to us a little bit about what you guys are up to right now.
Sure. Conscious Capitalism Press is a huge piece of our focus. We are such huge fans of the conscious capitalism movement. We believe in it like to our core. We were introduced to them back in 2014 and very quickly recognized that we had a role to play in helping that movement continue to spread. and that the people in the room were just our kind of people who did business or were trying to do business the way that we believed that was most beneficial to the world also. And so what ended up happening was over time, these other CEOs and presidents, particularly who were part of the community, started becoming really close friends of mine. And I just continued to find these people to be miraculous human beings. I really love these people. They are truly trying to contribute to the world. They're trying to elevate humanity through business. They're successful in many different ways. And it's a constant, uphill climb also. Yeah. And so there was recognition, as I was like falling in love with these people who are running these beautiful businesses, there was recognition that, as we become more conscious in our relation to capitalism, we tend to be people who work on our egos. And when we work on our egos, we tend to be less inclined to pick up a microphone and tell anyone else how to do anything. Because the more we really learn, the more we realize we know nothing.
We don't know anything,
We don't know anything. But in the absence of these people picking up a microphone and sharing their experiences with others, I'm watching other people pick up a microphone who I don't necessarily agree with what they're saying about how they do business and what other people should do. And so I felt this very strong compulsion to support other leaders in sharing what they've learned, particularly because when you talk about something as expansive as consciousness within the context of business, there are so many different lessons to learn, right? Like, I love using the example of just because I might be conscious in how we market or communicate what our organization does, I can't just carry that over to my agreements to make them conscious. I have to actually work with a conscious lawyer who spent their whole life helping people fight over money and came to that moment of, this is not a beneficial way of doing this. Like, I've got to figure out, how do we actually use the law and the way we structure our agreements to ensure that relationships stay intact when things go wrong, as opposed to blow up relationships. Like, no one was thinking about that, or very few people who were thinking that way. And then I meet someone like Glenn Meyer, and he shares conscious law, and my head just blows off, and I'm like, you've got to tell the world about this.
Right.
We got to figure out how to do that. So yes, we became very attached to conscious capitalism, and made a pitch to leadership to create the publishing division so that we can share all this beautiful wisdom. So we do put a fair amount of energy into that, and just into that community as a whole. And then Pay Active is another one that certainly we're very connected with, heart inspired by, in the same way that conscious law struck me when I heard Safwan Shah, the CEO of Pay Active, talk about how they were alleviating financial stress for workers by changing the timing of their pay.
Yeah.
And the way that he did it and does it by not costing an organization anything, by advancing the money, through Pay Active, and then just, it gets paid back during the payroll process. Like, he has answered every objection that an organization can make, and they're saving people hundreds of millions of dollars. And we're talking about people who need that savings. So people who are getting hit by just absorbent late fees and overdraft fees and high interest loans, like insane numbers when you dive into the industry. So supporting them and sharing their message and differentiating their organization, because while Safwan and Pay Active established the market for earned wage access, which didn't exist before, he invented it. Once it started working, which took him several years to convince people and to show that it worked, once it started working, all of a sudden, all this competition popped up.
Yeah. Yep.
And the competition is not necessarily conscious to the degree that Pay Active is, or altruistic in the same way. Like Safwan constantly, and Pay Active, like, they will put the user first. In most every scenario they can. Certainly anything that they're able to control, they'll put the user's needs first. And as a result, they've come up with the best pricing models to really be supportive of people. They've figured out how to answer all the questions, and they're constantly innovating in that way. And so supporting an organization that's also a B Corp, also a public benefit corporation, and this is built into the structure of their organizing principles now. Like, yeah, those are big. And then of course all of the other folks and authors that we support and love dearly. We tend to attract folks who are really trying to move the needle on something important in the world and need help creating a beacon so that people who are like-minded can see them in the world and conspire in their favor to improve things.
That's wonderful. And, someone like Stefan, knowing what he's been doing, what PayActive has been doing during the pandemic, especially, for paycheck to paycheck workers, getting them timely access to their pay is such a game changer for other people's lives. Like the overdraft fees and things like that is billions of dollars a year in the pockets of financial institutions. So what wonderful, what life-changing work you guys are supporting. Truly.
Yeah, no, it's such an honor to be working alongside so many folks who are just so fundamentally dedicated to improving the lives of others.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I had a question. What are the top challenges you're seeing organizationally and individual leaders? I guess this is in relationship to EOS. So good question.
I kind of want to follow it up with a question for Annette. Speaking specifically during the pandemic right now, or more in general, but I guess I can answer that myself because you can't avoid the circumstances that are occurring in the world. I think I've got a lot of CEO and president friends. You got some people who are simply struggling to save their business, right? You got some people who are thriving right now and figuring out how to manage what that means, which is a whole different set of emotions and a roller coaster there. And then you got people who are kind of in that in between, like their business isn't falling to pieces, but it's not thriving either. Eric Harrington, we helped write Eric's book several years ago, and he's just joining Conscious Capitalism Press right now. And Eric runs a series of pediatric dental clinics out in the Dallas area, and they were entirely shut down, for quite a while. But what I love about Eric and Conscious Capitalists, is while they couldn't work, he used that time to help all of his employees by teaching them personal development techniques, by teaching them more of the things that we learn as part of the Stegan leadership program that a bunch of us have gone through and been a part of. Whereas I know that there are banks out there, like one of our employees has a spouse who worked at a bank, and they were required to go in and sit at their desk and do nothing all day long, right? So some organizations, are simply trying to keep going, but they're not necessarily utilizing the gift of time well. But if we're going to pay people, what are we paying people to do with their time? I kind of had that moment the other day where I was just looking at the whole unemployment, this added benefit right now. You got a lot of people who, yes, they are staying home right now, which I think is probably, in my opinion, smart. And what are they doing with their time? That's a personal decision. So for those of us who are running businesses, we want to make sure that people are growing through this, right? So I think that's one of the pieces that leaders are contending with. First, there is simply survival, and then for those who are surviving, trying to figure out how do we use this as a learning opportunity, as opposed to just a getting by opportunity. Because on the other end of this, the companies that are still around ideally want to be coming out far stronger, as opposed to simply exhausted and depleted, for having just gotten through this. So those are a few thoughts on Annette's question. Thank you for the question, Annette.
Yeah, and I think, and I think this ties back to conscious leadership, and if not conscious capitalism as a whole, right? There are leaders doing it really, really right and really, really wrong, right? People doing mass firings over Zoom and mass layoffs over Zoom and things like that. And whether you do it well or not well, you're going to be remembered for this.
Yeah, I try to not levy right and wrong, because at the end of the day, I don't necessarily know what is right or what is wrong, or I don't know the circumstances that might have led somebody to deciding to do a group Zoom layoff. But it certainly begs the question of how did that become the obvious choice? Because there's a lot of emotion, right? That then doesn't necessarily seem that it'll advance the business. So trying to be as thoughtful as possible, as gracious and as kind as possible, while for some people the sky is falling. I also understand that sometimes that's less accessible when things are that on fire.
Yeah, that's true. Desperate people do desperate things in desperate situations, right?
Of course, yeah. I certainly am not my best self when I perceive my circumstances as threatened. Yeah, very challenging. But that's I guess that stresses the importance of trying to be mindful, trying to be thoughtful, and in the long term of all of this, the importance of developing ourselves as leaders so that in these moments we can show up really with strong support for ourselves, right? Simply through the personal development that we've done. Like, it's so important for leaders to expand their toolkit so that in moments like this, they can show up and be a quality leader, as opposed to devolve or default to behaviors that ultimately will be damaging for the business and for the lives that they touch.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. So what should I have asked you about EOS and RTC that I haven't today?
Well, for EOS, I don't know if it's I don't have a question that's popping up for me, but just I don't think I could advocate enough for the model. It truly was oxygen for us, and Chris White, our implementer, deserves a tremendous amount of that credit. Of course, he's supported by truly a great model that is just so wonderfully effective. But I think one of the key pieces that I'll share that's popping up for me as you throw that question out is that as a leader, implementing EOS and watching our people get it and watching them expand their own understanding of what's possible within their role, that has been probably the most rewarding aspect of all of this. And I think I've heard other business leaders at certain points in their careers say that there's no greater gratification than watching your team find new capacity for themselves and step up and make more money and feel more reward from their contributions and all those things. And we're absolutely, like, as an organization, seeing that. And it does. It makes my heart swell, no doubt, especially, with the folks who've been with us for a long time. We got a lot of people who've been with us 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years. Mm-hmm. And watching them get more footing underneath them, take more ownership of things, it's spectacular. I mean, just, you can see how it impacts their whole life. And I feel very grateful to be a part of that. And I certainly think EOS has played a significant role mm-hmm. in setting them free to fulfill more potential of their own.
I love it. Any questions from those of you that are watching? Any follow-up questions? Let us know in the comments. And so what are you up to today? What does a day look like for Corey Blake?
Up pretty early this morning, and my workout was from 7:30 to 8:30. I do a virtual workout with a trainer mm-hmm. Who I've been working out with for 3 years, and I'll tell you, the Zoom workouts are fine. Like, they're great. She's phenomenal, of course, but but working out at home is fine, and it saves me 15 minutes each way of travel. So I'm like, I don't know that I'll go back to a gym. And so that was 7:30 to 8:30 after I'd already put in an hour of work and gotten up and breakfast. And I always start the day by making coffee for my wife.
I love that. I love that.
And
good man.
yeah. Then I did some script writing for Pay Active because we've got this animated short film that's coming out, and we're kind of building an ecosystem of content around that, and super stoked about that. And our team has had so many phenomenal ideas. So I'm supporting some of those right now. This beautiful conversation with you. I think I've got a couple of appointments this afternoon. Pay Active, we do a big group meeting with like 12 members from our team and from their team. So I have that in another hour. And then I got the flooring guy coming in for the flooding downstairs. It's a constant, balancing, running back and forth between dealing with personal things that need to be tended to, helping the team, and then stepping into the visionary role as I'm able to also, and the personal care. I mean, it's and I can't juggle to save my life. So no, I do all right with it in business.
You do pretty well.
I wouldn't trust me in circus.
So I don't want to let you go before we talk about who RTC works with and what you guys love to do.
Yeah, so thank you. So we tend to attract CEOs and thought leaders of various kinds. A very expansive range. We're not industry specific, so we focus on folks who are really looking to move the needle on something. Oftentimes, particularly for people who are leading an organization, when a leader has that recognition that their purpose is expanding beyond the four walls of their business, right? Like, we've learned how to do some really brilliant things within our company, and I feel like we're supposed to help start to teach other people how to do some of those things. When they're in that kind of transition, we're an exceptional partner to help them to tell the story of how they've gotten to this place in a way that's intimate and that connects the dots of their whole life in a way that a reader or an audience can say, oh my gosh, you've been built for this. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's very trust building, and we use storytelling to do that. So it's a very authentic process. It's a deep process. We do it through books. We do it through documentary films, through illustrated work, through art installations that we do with organizations. So it's a very artistic medium, right, across the board. But ultimately, it's all in support of how do we tell the most authentic story possible so that the right stakeholders see this organization or this leader in the world and come running. And say, I don't, not even knowing necessarily why they're coming running. Like, I don't know what necessarily we're meant to do together, but it feels like something. All kinds of opportunities bloom from that. So we are supportive of that ecosystem for folks, and we typically surround folks with a whole team, and we do it with love. We really, really emphasize that love is much like EOS. Love is a foundational support system. Mm-hmm. Right. So particularly when we're working with folks who are crafting this authentic story, it's a scary process. It just is. It's revealing. Right. You can't share where you've been and where you're destined to go without letting people into the stuff that's harder to look at. And so creating a loving and non-judgmental environment for people to explore that and then find their comfort sharing that with the world. That's the intersection that we get to play in. So it's psychological safety, storytelling, business marketing, it's culture, it's this whole stew, delicious, delicious stew that we get to be a part of helping to cook for folks.
Awesome. How can people get in touch with you?
They can find us at roundtablecompanies.com. You can find me at Corey at roundtablecompanies.com. The correct spelling of Corey, Corey, very important to mention. And, Corey Blake 9000 on Twitter and on Instagram. I would love to be in touch with folks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and it's always great to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Maria. You're so phenomenal at this. It's so much fun to watch your business as it's growing and all the opportunities and all the connections that you're offering and extending to people. For people who don't know, we are partners with you, and for folks who are looking for support with social media, with TED Talks, my goodness, with podcast tours, which you're just miraculous at. Truly, you've been a phenomenal partner to us and to our clients. And it's fun to watch your business growing, and I'm sure at some point in the near future, I'll have to introduce you to Chris.
Yeah, I every time I look at you guys, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need EOS, and I love working with you guys. So sending you some love there, and love partnering with you guys, and watching all the amazing things that you're putting out in the world, especially right now. So
we're so appreciative of your support.
Well, likewise. Awesome. Well, for those of you who are watching the replay, let us know what you think, and reach out to Corey at roundtablecompanies.com.
Look forward to it. Thanks,
We'll
Marie.